And welcome everybody to Father Shawn's Paranormal Ministry. I am his co-host Annette Munich. Father Shawn is unable to be here. He is on extended leave. His wife has very serious ongoing medical issues. And we do have a GoFundMe for Sharon Whittington. The link will be in the chat, and the link will also be, it'll be in the comments underneath the show after it's over as well, because all of your donations and all of your prayers are really, really appreciated. You have no idea. It's just a really bad scenario, and he's very sorry he can't be here. On the GoFundMe, it's titled Join Sharon's Fight to Beat Cancer. And thank you to everybody that responds to that. You're so appreciated. Um, Father Shawn is a priest with the United States Old Catholic Church. You may know him from the show Eli Roth Presents, The Legion of Exorcists, which appeared originally on Travel Channel, but now it can be seen also on Max and Discovery Plus. Father Shawn is also the author of 2 books, God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry, Volumes 1 and 2. I'm co-host Annette Munich. I have my business is Stellium Books. I'm his publisher. I do have a new book to talk about this week, which is Apex by James Baxter. Excellent book. AI dinosaurs, just really, really intense. A real page turner. Anybody that enjoys that kind of a good read, I recommend you go and get a copy. It is available on Amazon in paperback and Kindle. And today we're having just too much fun. We're going to have the UFO UAP Open mic, and very happy for my guest today to talk about this with us, and that is Karl Sup. I'm going to bring him on right now. Karl Sup is a lifelong paranormal experiencer. He is also a very seasoned squatcher, an elite squatcher. He is a public speaker on the subject, very well known, very well respected over the years, and a soon-to-be published author. He's got his books that he's working on. He's always busy working on something over there. And very happy to have Karl joining us. Karl and I are both UFO. Um, we've both seen UFO or UAP. They didn't used to say UAP. They only used to say UFO. Now they say UFO UAP. He and I have both seen, and I'm not going to speak for Father Shawn and tell his story, but Father Shawn as well. And I can say that because he's talked about it on the show before. So that would be all 3 of us have seen UFO UAP. And we're going to talk about that today, and we're going to take your comments and questions. Might even take a poll or 2. And so as we welcome Karl, hello, Karl. Karl's one of my favorite people. We're going to give him a heart for being with us today. We're just happy to have him joining us. And I would like to start off with a poll. We've got Carrie here, Heidi, we've got Linda. Anybody here, have you seen, or do you think you have seen a UFO, UAP? And now I'm going to turn it to Karl. How are you doing? Thank you.
I'm doing very well. Very well, thank you.
Very happy to have you. Yep. You're always a man with an interesting story. We have him on a lot talking about Bigfoot, but he has all kinds of stories. And this started from the time that he was a young person, that he's been experienced.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. So you're
started with spirits and ghosts, and ended up migrating over to UFOs or UAPs after an experience I had, and then later on Bigfoot. So it's it's been a journey. I'll put it that way.
I would say, and I said this kind of a lot, and hi Kira, Kira's here too. I've said this a lot that back in the day, that's getting, you're getting old when you're always saying back in the day. That's me. Back in the day, in the paranormal community, you kind of had to pick. You couldn't say, oh, yeah, I experienced ghosts and everything, and then also say UFOs, or if you wanted to say Bigfoot, you had to kind of pick one, because if you claim to have experienced two or more, then you're just crazy for sure. When if it's just ghosts, you're maybe crazy. So
Yeah.
now what I found is that a lot of people that are experiencers of any kind tend to be experiencers of every kind, that they have uh, let's call it a sensitivity, or more of an open
I
channel,
agree.
or something like that. And so if you're experiencing one, there's a good chance that you're experiencing multiple. And also, I think that the more you experience, the more you tend to experience, because they can tell that you see them, you hear them, XYZ. So they tend to kind of be drawn to you. So that was a big mouthful, but we'll see what you have to say about that.
Oh yeah, no, and I agree. I mean, it's you know, and I think a lot of that comes just from people, keeping an open mind. I mean, there's a lot of things in this that we don't understand, and it's really human hubris to uh, think that we know everything or we've explored everything and know everything, right? And it's and that's absolutely not the case. So always keep an open mind. So
And, now I'm going to say something I shouldn't say, but I love this. I often start off and then I go and say something deep or whatever that I wasn't intending to, and I take it to a weird place. When I first got involved in the paranormal, I was amazed. Why? Because people were kind of snotty. The UFO people didn't believe in the ghosts, or the ghosts didn't believe in the Bigfoot or whatever, and they were non-supportive of each other. And I'm thinking, the whole deal about this being the paranormal is we're talking about the realm of the unexplained. It's not a contest.
right. Oh,
And I didn't like
right.
that.
Exactly.
If anybody was kind of putting somebody else down, I really didn't like that, because, like you're saying, this is the realm of the unexplained. We don't really know. Just because, you think this or you think that doesn't make anybody a definitive expert on all that is. There's no such thing.
Exactly. Yep. I mean, yeah, exactly. You can have experiences that someone else hasn't had. Someone could have far more experiences than you do, and just because they did, or in a different area or genre or topic, it doesn't mean that um, you're in any of those really. You're only seeing a slice of the pie, right? And you just have to take those. And I'm a science guy, so you have to take those data points and analyze that data, and in a lot of cases just hold that data back and reference it later, right? Because even though you haven't experienced it, that doesn't mean that that other person didn't have that experience as well. So
Absolutely. We've got Heidi saying, I have had experiences that I thought was paranormal, but when reflecting back, it was ET or cosmic. I have seen UFO and beings. Okay,
Wow.
there's an experience. Now she's saying and beings. I've only seen what I would call a UFO. I've seen it 3 times, different ones. Mm. I'm not claiming to have seen aliens. I'm claiming to
Yeah,
see
I have not.
things in the sky that I don't know what it is.
Well, if you want, I could dive into my first sighting, which was in June 30th, 1975,
Yes, please.
and it, you know, as a family, we actually went out on a little outing to a drive-in movie theater. For those far younger who have no drive-ins near you, that's where you go and park your car and watch the movie from inside your car.
Too fun.
Which is,
Now you're doing back in the day, but you know what? That was just too fun. That was really great.
yeah, it was always a fun time. But you know, we had pillows and blankets and so forth, and my sister and I camped out in the bed of the family station wagon to town. My parents were sitting in lawn chairs outside the outside of the car at the back, and and watched the movie, double feature. And it was I only remember one of the movies was Apple Dumpling Gang with Don Knotts. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but
Yes.
it's been a while. Uh, but yeah, when we returned home, it was late, so it was probably about 11:30 at night, and my dad wasn't in the greatest of health, so he had actually gone inside the house along with my mom, and she was kind of getting him. Uh, getting him ready for bed and stuff. And my sister just headed inside the house. So everything, unloading the car was on me, right? And I was 12. Actually, no, I was 11 and a half. So, and here I am out there. I pull lawn chairs out of the back and I take those inside the house, and I come back out to go get the pillows and the blankets, and I've got those just bundled in my arms, and and what what uh what surprised me or just confused me, it was, yeah, that's a better word, confused, was that the it was like the air was still. It was like almost like there was no air. Everything was incredibly quiet. I couldn't, like any
And
ambient
you know what?
sounds of road noise or anything nearby. It was,
Everybody
yeah.
forgive me for interrupting him, but this is something that we talk about a lot, and we will go right back to his story. There is some kind of weird thing that can happen outdoors, and all of a sudden everything goes completely still. No more wind, no more crickets, no more nothing. And it has a weird feel to it. And there's people that say that that might be like a portal, a veil. Something's changing, something is able to merge, something's coming. So we've talked about that quite a lot, and it's interesting that you brought that up, that that happened. I'm going to turn it back over to you because that's a really super interesting topic, how it gets weird like that.
Well, yeah. So I'm just confused, and I'm looking around like what's going on. And of course I got these blankets and pillows right in my arm, and at the end of our driveway was a street light, and in the light pollution from the street light sky, I ended up looking up, and I mean, it couldn't have been more than 1,000 feet above. I think it was lower, but I'll say 1,000 feet above me was this triangular craft, and it was moving just not very fast, totally silent, no lights on it, just slowly drifting as it came over, and in the light from from the street light, just it was illuminating it a little bit. It I could actually see like a pattern. I want to say rectangular, overlapping rectangular and square patterns on the underside of it that wasn't, um, so it wasn't smooth or you know, it didn't look metallic, but it would just slowly drifted over, and and I stood there just watching it in this, what I want to say, a bubble of strangeness, right? And then when it kind of ended up passing where the street light wasn't illuminating it anymore, I ran inside and almost came right into and I dropped everything on the driveway. And
Yeah.
my dad was standing in the kitchen, and I was like, Dad, there's something in the sky. I need you to take a look at this. And so he followed me out into the backyard because that was the trajectory. It was moving from northeast to southwest, was the direction it was moving. And we got, and he goes, well, let's go in the front, let's go take a look. And I said, no, it should be already over the backyard by now. Well, we got out into the backyard and there was no ambient light shining up into the sky back there. And it was pitch black, but you couldn't see any stars where this craft was up in the sky. So it wasn't like translucent or anything like that. It actually blotted them out. And it was, and my dad saw that and he said, well, that's strange. And he's like, well, maybe it's a blimp. Right. And I was like, it was triangular, and of course I went back out and I, did my good son deeds and picked up everything off the driveway and locked up the car. And then I kind of filed that away. But I know in May of 1977, I went and I saw Star Wars, and the opening scene when the Star Destroyer comes across the screen. I actually had a little bit of PTSD from that because I was shocked, as far as the texture on the underside of it and so forth. And of course, 2 years prior, why would, anyway, it was, but that was my experience from that. But the interesting thing and the revelation I've had this year was I actually watched the documentary Age of Disclosure
Okay.
that came out. And in that, they were talking about, and also I watched the S4 Bob Lazar story, and they talked about the way the propulsion unit, they believe, works on these craft, the anti-gravity. It creates an anti-gravity field, and that field extends out well beyond the craft. And it makes me wonder if that, I want to say, vacuum or stillness or whatever is caused by this bubble of anti-gravity that it's generating.
That's a really interesting thing to throw out there. I know when it happened to me, when everything went still and there were no more sounds. It was a summer night. Everything went still, the wind stopped, no more crickets, and it just felt weird. Like there was a weird energy to the air, but that was connected to ghost and not UFO. Now, there are
Oh,
people
wow.
that say, and we can't really say it's right or wrong, but there are people that say that all of this stuff is just interdimensional stuff that passes in and out of the quote unquote veil or portal or whatever you might want to call it. And maybe that's true because with the UFOs and stuff, um, it's hard to, well, maybe it isn't for other people, but to think there's a planet somewhere in specific that they're all coming from and la la la, be easier to think that because they're so much more advanced than we are, they're able to pass in and out of our reality. And just the same thing that we think about Bigfoot, that they're able to pass in
Yeah.
and out of our reality and other cryptids. And then in the spirit world, um, I think there's different scenarios. Some might be around all the time, some might be passing in and out. And also, there's stories where it seems like maybe the weird thing happens, and then the veil is thin, and then you see them and they see you.
And that's possible too. I mean, like I said, I certainly didn't expect that. Right, I was just my chores, right, and it was like,
Right,
and then just that strange, but it wasn't for the strange feeling. I may have never looked up because I was trying to
right,
figure out what's going on here. This
right.
is super odd. But I've had people ask, like, do you think that you were, taken during that period? But the elapsed time from when I went into the house and got my dad after it, it was, and plus I don't, I was standing there just mesmerized by whatever this was up in the sky. And then the moment I couldn't see it anymore, I dropped everything and ran in the house, so, um, I was still holding everything in my arms. It wasn't like, stuff was just left down there, um, so I don't believe that happened only because, the time, uh, elapsed time was, not that great, right? So it was about maybe 5 minutes of looking at it. So,
I've heard other stories too of people looking at the sky and realizing that they're actually looking at quite an enormous craft because,
oh, huge.
pardon me, the shape of the craft is blotted out pitch black and there's stars around it, and like there'll be this huge area where there's no stars at all, and if you stare at it you see the shape of the craft.
Yep. I would estimate this was probably 500 feet long at least. I mean, it was
Oh,
it was very sizable. Yeah,
there
it
you
was
go.
very sizable. So,
That's
but I
very
could only
interesting.
see the part that was illuminated.
Well, the story that
But
I have
no, and that,
is here. I'm sorry. Go ahead if you wanted to finish. I was going to
no, no,
tell.
no, no, no.
I
I
have.
was done.
Okay. The story that I have, and mine was like so freaky. Here in Oklahoma, and or on the expressway, and we saw two of them triangular, and they made no noise, and they're coming along the highway. They're up, of course, and they could stop and they could change directions very easily, but they would do that and then come back together, and they're coming along the highway. And we're like, holy crap, because we watched it. This went on for a while. And then the one went over the highway and we had to drive under it. We had no choice. That was scary. And we were looking up at the bottom of it, and it was flashing red lights, flashing white lights, flashing red lights, flashing white lights. And we drove under it, and I got a good look up at the undercarriage of it. And that was like extremely freaky. And then it went back over, and then the both of them continued. I mean, they must have both have been 50 miles or more that they were there. It wasn't that quick. It was really a freaky experience. And so that's my biggest one. And then out here in the country, I've seen two that are similar. And the one was just up in the sky, and it was at night, and it did have some lights, but it wasn't moving. It just stayed there and made no sound. It was there for so long. I watched it. I told everybody, come out and see this thing. They came out, they got bored, they went back in the house, they went to bed. I'm still watching it. I go in the house, get something to drink, I come out, it's still there. It was still there when I went to bed. It was just there. And then another one
Wow.
um, did that same thing. Um, but maybe that same summer, but not like within a week or two. It was spaced out a little bit. Um, so those are very interesting. Now, when I say that, I'm not saying I saw a spaceship exactly. I'm not sure what I saw. Could the government have things that behave this way, that are soundless, that can shoot up, that can change directions, that can do all kinds of things? Maybe. I don't think so. I don't know. The government sure does have secrets, but I would say that I've seen three, and based on how long it went on. If it were just something short and them, I might be like, I'm not really sure what I saw. But for so long, I mean, that second one, that had to go on for hours, 5 hours. And I go to bed and it's still there. So that's crazy. I'm looking at this thing for 5 hours. Everybody comes and looks and they go back in the house. They get bored with it. Here's Carrie saying, I saw a ball of fire fly right across my windshield from left to right on a drive late one night about 12 years ago. It was very bright yellow and white in color. I've heard people talk about the giant balls and spheres and stuff like that, but she's saying ball of fire. That's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I haven't encountered that myself, but there's so many people that have seen something like that. It's obviously there's facts behind that, or
Right?
so.
So there's all
But
different kinds
yeah,
of things.
absolutely. Yeah, my second sighting was not quite as dramatic, but I had gone to a science camp up in the mountains of Arizona, and Arizona has amazing skies, especially when you get away from the larger cities. In fact, we have so many observatories in Arizona: Kitt Peak and the Vatican's observatory, Lola
I was going to
Observatory in
say,
Flagstaff, which yeah, and and the that we're up at where ASU typically does their summer football training at Camp Tonazona, and uh, the all the all everybody had to, whatever, bedtime was 9 p.m. or something like that, and everybody heads into the cabins. Well, they had a girls' cabin, and a boys' cabin, and everybody was in bunk beds. And of course, we waited until all the adults were asleep, and then we snuck out onto the football field, which had an unobscured view of the sky. And everybody, we laid out on the 50-yard line. We're looking at the stars, and there's a bunch of nerds, right? So we decided to uh, play the satellite game, which we could see who would spot the most satellites moving across the sky. So somebody had point one out, and then somebody else would have to validate. Oh, yeah, yep, that's one, or and so I don't know what the count was up to. Plus there was a few. A few guys and girls who really weren't paying too much attention to this guy out there, but um, but I'm sure the counselors were probably not thrilled with that. But uh, so we're looking at the skies, and all of a sudden somebody says, "Oh, there's one," and everybody's like, "Where?" And everybody looks in, they point it out, and we're looking, and it's moving the same speed as the other satellites that we saw moving, and except this one's red. It,
hmm,
and it's at the same distance, it's about the same size, and it's moving across the sky at that same speed, but it's a red light. It's bright red, and everybody was, and we started going, we're like, why is it red? And then somebody says, oh, maybe it's a Russian satellite. Of course, this is the early '80s, so we're thinking, oh, it's so and somebody's like, no, it wouldn't be a Russian satellite, and and then just then, as everybody's looking at it, it stops, just absolutely stops dead, right in the sky, in the same spot, and long enough that we're having a discussion. Well, how is that possible? How could it, you know? And then somebody's like, well, maybe it's falling towards Earth. It's heading towards us, and that's why it doesn't look like it's changing. Or anyway, so we're having these discussions, and then with that, it had been moving like on a trajectory like this, and then it shot at about a 45-degree angle away from it at unbelievable speed.
Hmm.
But it was probably like 3 to 5 minutes just sitting in that one spot, and then it took off, just right over the horizon. It was great, and then everybody stopped. There was no talking, and everybody just silently got up, and we went back into the cabins. It's like, I don't know what we just saw, but
Right. Yeah, that's a crazy story. But if you're that's perfect. You're laying there and you're looking. And in Arizona you can see
yep,
the stars very, very well. And it's funny that
very
you
well.
brought up the Vatican because they know that aliens and UFOs are real because they have one of the biggest observatories in the world. And they had a luncheon or a conference about it like 4 years ago with all of these different scientists, so they don't really deny it.
Yeah, yep, that's absolutely true.
If that's something
The
I shouldn't say, I should stop and
yeah, I
say
was going to say, well,
my opinions don't reflect the opinions of this station or Father Shawn or Karl Sup or anybody else.
yep,
I have to have a
and that's
disclaimer.
okay. I think we know that, right?
Right,
Yeah,
right.
but no, I was going to also call out too that in Arizona in 1975, in during the same summer that I had that sighting down in Tempe, Arizona, with the large triangular craft. There was a very renowned encounter that occurred north of Payson, Arizona, near Snowflake, Arizona, and that was the fire in the sky incident with Travis Bolton and the logging crew as well.
Oh,
And that
yeah.
so and as a kid, I remember following that in the newspapers as well because it was just like, you know, and then of course everyone claiming otherwise. Later on, I'll say it was probably 1995 or so. I ended up meeting Travis Walton just by accident, and I ended up talking with him for 45 minutes about the his experience. And
Wow.
boy, I could not. There was no deception whatsoever. So, and I'm telling you, he was. It really happened to him. That's my belief.
Wow, that's very cool. Um, and that story's pretty famous, but if you want to outline it a little bit, in case you think
Oh,
Travis
sure. Yeah,
Walton
yeah.
started Walmart, no.
Yeah, so yeah, yeah. No, he is not attached to the Walmart dynasty. So, but no, Travis was working as a lumberjack along with a crew. I think his brother-in-law and a few others were in the vehicle, and as they were finishing up for the day, they were heading back out of the forest, and they saw a light ahead. They actually thought that it could be a fire, possibly. It was so bright, and when uh, and they pulled up, and then he kind of realized this is range. I don't know what this is, and he got out of the car, and his buddies were telling him, like, no, no, don't go near it, whatever. And he ended up walking over to it, and they saw him uh, get taken, uh, for lack of a better word. And with that, uh, the other three took off in the truck, and headed into town and told their story. And of course, law enforcement thought that they were, they had done something to him, and this was an excuse, and et cetera, et cetera. And then it was several days later, Travis showed up in Heber, Arizona. In fact, the payphone that he called from is still there, with a little sign near it that this was the phone that Travis called. It was the he ended up, he showed up basically undressed, naked, and called, and then everybody thought that it was. Then they started saying it was a big hoax, but he had specific marks on his body, and it was. And of course, he's been battling that level of, I want to say, disdain or disbelief for decades. So I feel for him.
Interesting. I want to do a quick poll and ask the chat room. How many of you have taken the time to look over some of these files that were released last week? If anybody, basically what I was seeing is video and some transcription and audio from pilots and whatnot. It's your most basic stuff, but didn't think that it was ever going to come up. And Carl and I were saying before the show started, was a little bit weird. It's like, I wonder if something's on the horizon that made them feel like we have to finally say something.
I agree.
We're definitely in that kind of a world. I mean, I think that they think that a lot of people are going to freak out. I personally don't think that. I know that there are some people that really just don't believe in it, and that's okay, fine. But I don't think it's going to be a mass panic situation unless. This is the unless. I'm going to throw this on you. This is just opening the
Okay.
door. We're just opening the door this much. That's it. We're just opening the door. And then it's going to be progressive. And it's going to be the next batch. And then the batch after that. And then after that. And we're going to start to see the big picture. I don't know if you've seen or heard any of what Tim Burchett was saying from Tennessee. He's a senator or a congressman. I think he's a senator. But he was talking about the ocean ones and how big and fast they are. Very interesting. Huge UFOs in the ocean that move extremely fast. That he says we have nothing like it really to compare to it in size or speed. So when people say they see things come out of the water, and when Father Shawn comes back, I'm going to bring it up to ask him to tell his story again. But there's a lot of people that say that they see things come up out of the water.
Yep. Well, and they talk about, or what they call USOs, right? Unknown submerged object, right? And those craft, if what Bob Lazar was saying, and like I said, what was discussed in Age of Disclosure documentary, if the craft are truly generating, which, like, I think that's what I experienced, some kind of a anti-gravity bubble, of course they could actually, the medium that they're flying through, whether it's the air or if it's water or so forth, that really wouldn't, it wouldn't impede, its speed, and so, where it's, unlike any of our submarines, right? That that have friction and drag on the water as well. So
Right. Well, I think I have this guy's name right. His name is, I believe, Stephen Greer. And he had like movie / documentary where he was teaching people how to call UFOs. If I'm wrong, was the name Stephen Greer? Please correct me. How to mentally call UFOs, and they show up. And they have a bunch of people now that do this. They'll get together and get their lawn
Well,
chairs out, and they will mentally call for them to come, and they come.
So it's kind of funny, So do you remember back in the '70s? Actually, there was even the musical group, the Carpenters. I'm going to go on the
Yeah,
way back machine here, but they had a song.
back in the
They had a
day.
song called "Calling Call, Calling Occupants of Interstellar Craft." That was the name of the song, and
I
and
didn't know about
the
that.
whole point of that was that they wanted to get everyone's mind into a mindset in order to communicate with them, and that was so. If you, I'm sure you can find that online somewhere, but it's worth a listen because at the time I remember kind of going, like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever, but who knows, right?
Do you
Who
think
knows?
that that's a good idea to
Um,
mentally try to
it,
call them in?
you know, I'm not sure. I know that the funny thing is, in talking with Travis Walton, he actually believed that uh, when he went into the area of the light, it was like the propulsion system of the craft, and he may have gotten, let's say, radiation sickness, and that's why they took him on board and worked on him in order to fix the issue. Um, and this is what he's kind of recounting and thinking about, and um, of course, you know, poor cows. I don't think that they're, you know, all these mutilated cattle that we find out in the middle of nowhere. That those are with precision incisions. That's also confusing as well. So, uh, and kind of unanswered questions of that. So,
Susan's here, Susan
but
Ahern, and she'll be here for the last Friday of the month, like she usually does. She couldn't come at the
yeah,
last
Susan's
Friday
fantastic.
in April. So, hi, Susan. Um, that's interesting that you bring up the cattle mutilations because I don't know if anybody watches Skinwalker Ranch. I love Skinwalker Ranch. I'm a little bit behind on it, but
Yep.
I do love that show. And they experienced everything there, everything, but
Yep.
including cattle mutilations. And when they looked over the video at what happened with this mutilated cow, they saw something weird in the sky. And this happened, this is like season one, I think. This happened really fast. Like the cow seemed okay, and then the cow seemed weird, and then the cow is like dead and cut and just,
Yep.
I mean, it was a very fast process. But when they reviewed the video, they saw what looked like a UFO in the sky. And when that appeared, that's when the cow's behavior, all of them started to change.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, that was a good episode.
Yo, you
But
remember
but
that?
I love the way they I oh absolutely, and I just love the way that they apply science to almost every aspect of that,
Yeah.
including even when they were working with sounds, when they had uh, Native Americans, with drums and the different, and they suddenly got this very cold spot, which you know they couldn't explain, right? Why? How could this cold spot suddenly appear during specific sound patterns? And I thought that was very interesting as well. So,
That
being
whole
an audio
show
guy,
is very interesting. And we have Jim Segala on sometimes, and he was from season one. Hi, Michelle. Michelle's here. Michelle Wilfong. He was from season one of the scientists, and he talks about it Um, he's an interesting person too because he was working at the ranch with the ranch before it changed hands into the new ownership. I'm trying to think of that man's name. I know it, I just can't think of it right away, but he was part of the research that was going on before it was purchased and before they started to do the show. And he said something really interesting that I enjoyed about the whole thing because they have, for anybody who hasn't seen Secrets of Skinwalker Ranch, excellent show and excellent methodology that they take. They're very careful, check, check, double check. It's not haphazard at all. They have UFO there, they have ghosts there. You don't see too much about the ghosts, but in those old homes that they have on the ranch, they do. Um, and then they have like where they think they see werewolves there, cattle mutilations there, weird what they think are Indian cursives on the mesa, and the mesa lights up, and they have weird electromagnetic readings. They've had um, guys take EMF readings, and it's so high they're getting burned when it wasn't like that the day before. Also, their phones will go
Yep.
crazy, and the phones will just start dialing all kinds of numbers, and all of them at the same time, their phones will go crazy. Um, yeah, the
Yeah.
guy that
The other thing is that there's actually something inside the mesa there, which they actually have physical evidence of a ceramic material that appears to be self healing, which is remarkable. I don't know. We'll see we'll see what happens here in the upcoming season. It's going to be airing soon, I think.
the show's crazy. If you start watching it, you're gonna love it. Um, and anyway, what Jim Segala said, and he's gonna be back with us, I think, in June. He said that you begin to realize that even though there's all these different kinds of manifestations, you're dealing with one consciousness. You might do something over here, and it might react or I don't want to say pay you back, but kind of over here. It's that, as you go along, you
Quantum
realize,
physics.
yeah, this is not all separate things. This is a one consciousness that is presenting as and moving as different types of phenomena.
Yep. No, I agree. I agree. Yeah, my um, I could talk a little bit about my second sighting, which was actually
Sure,
the Phoenix Lights, if you
sure.
wanted to.
Yes, we have 10 minutes
Sure.
left.
Okay. So okay. All right. Perfect. Yeah. So I was working late. I was I can even give you the cross streets right near Osborne and 24th Street in downtown Phoenix, on the east side of 24th Street. And I stepped out of I was working late. There was no one else in the office, and it was a little past 8 o'clock. And I came out of the office, went to go get to the car, and I looked up in the sky, and heading south towards Sky Harbor Airport is something that was triangular and very large, uh, but it wasn't distinct to me, right? But there was lights on the bottom of them that were spaced, and as I tried to describe the lights, I want to say they were like, it wasn't an incandescent bulb, it wasn't an LED bulb, it was almost a like a swirling bioluminescent light. I don't know how to describe it, but it was not just a straight solid beam on these lights. It was there was but it was just, I want to say, the eastern edge of the craft was about a mile to the west of me, and I couldn't really see on the other side, so I just saw this line of lights along that eastern edge of it as it was heading south. But I remember looking up and I thought, well, that's an unusual formation of, and initially I was thinking, oh, helicopters, right?
Mhm.
But then I actually went back and took a second look at it because I I realized that it's heading down towards restricted airspace at Sky Harbor Airport, because it was going directly towards where the all the aircraft would be landing at the airport. And in fact, I know that Kurt Russell later on, he actually was a witness as well. He actually saw the lights as he was on approach to land at Sky Harbor Airport, and he called it in. But
Oh,
I remember, you know, but I remember looking at it and initially, and I was like, huh, that's a strange, formation of helicopters, right? And then I looked back up at it and I thought, well, that's weird, but why is it moving towards that restricted airspace? And that's kind of strange. But of course, I already put in about a 14-hour day, and I kind of ended up shrugging my shoulders, and I got in the car and I drove home. Well, I wasn't probably even maybe 5 miles from home, and on the radio it starts coming on where there's reports of all these people that have seen this large craft that flew over Phoenix. I get home and it's all over the news by that time, and I get home and I tell my wife all about it. I'm like, you're I saw that. I was like, I saw that, and it was pretty much almost directly overhead,
wow.
just a mile, to the west of me, but the interesting thing I always thought was the lights, and then of course around 10 p.m., I think the Air Force went out and actually let go some flares to the south of Phoenix, and then they were saying, "Oh, that's what everybody saw with these flares. That was south of South Mountain in Phoenix," and that was not the case because it was pretty much right over me in central Phoenix. And I have friends that also were that lived near the end of the runway at Luke Air Force Base in the West Valley here, and they said that there was F-6 that were scrambled right about that same time. That just came blasting out of there, which was unusual for that time of night. So,
That's so
and then of course
interesting.
everyone started making fun of it, and yeah,
Did
yep.
you say what
So
year that was? How long
that
ago
was
was
1997.
1997? Very
March
cool.
13th, 1997.
Wow. And when you're saying triangular, did it remind you of the other triangular shaped?
I couldn't, yeah, I couldn't see any details on it. It was kind of blotted out the sky, but it was much larger than than what I saw in 1975. So
Interesting,
that
much
was
larger.
yeah,
Because I
and
would
that,
say that.
that
Go ahead.
oh, no, I was going to say that the swirling light, like I said, almost like a bioluminescent or a organic bioluminescent swirl is what I described. Like I said, when I thought back on it, I'm like, that's not like no other light that I've seen,
Yeah,
before or since. So
yeah. Susan saying, "What a great experience! Love that story." And it's a very cool story. And the triangular craft that I saw was not really that big. I mean, it was big, but not like what you're describing. Mine, I would say,
yeah,
it was bigger than the length of a semi, but not like a ginormous thing.
oh, this was I want to say a mile across. That's how large this thing was.
I
Based
got a
on other
UFO
people's
Pinto.
accounts.
I got a UFO
Pinto?
Pinto, or a Gremlin or something. I got
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Yugo of UFOs. That's what I got.
Yeah, I tell you the most interesting thing about that sighting that so many people saw in Phoenix at that time was that the first sightings of it were near Paulden, Arizona, which is kind of north of Prescott and Chino Valley, and other people saw it as well, but saw it heading south, but from Paulden, Chino Valley, Prescott, and so there was actually a timeline based on time and distance of witnesses going all the way basically from Interstate 40 in northern Arizona all the way south across Phoenix and down towards Tucson. So all these people separately witnessed it, had as far as a timestamp, so on it. I mean, if you have to think about it, that was a craft of some kind. Now, whose craft it was, don't know, right?
Yeah. But I mean, the size of it, too, that's just hard to explain. Very interesting
Right.
that Kurt Russell called it in. And I think that is
Yeah.
a very, very interesting story. You have a lot of witnesses to that. That's extremely cool.
Yeah.
I know we
Thousands.
only have 3 minutes left, and I want to say this because I was really enjoying this, and there's so much to talk about, and I do have a cancellation for next week. So if you would want to come back, we could do a part 2.
I would love that. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, I think it would be a lot of fun, and it's possible too that they could drop more files between now and then. There's kind of a lot to talk about here, and we just kind of started with the beginning. We had a lot of people in the chat that are um, saying that they have seen UFO, UAP, and even one person that said that experienced seeing an alien. So that's really, really interesting. And like I said, I think what happened with the government, which I have to do a retraction because I never thought they'd actually do it, but they did. But all they did was open the door this much. There is so much more, and I think it's going to come out in batches because that's what they like to do. And we're going to get little snippets, and the story's going to get bigger and bigger. And I would love to have you back next week and talk about it again.
Absolutely. Let's do that.
Let's do that. We'll have a part 2. UFO UAP open mic. And Golden Cougar Wolf is saying, I have an interesting photo I'd like you to see. If you are in our chat room, it says contact Annette, and there's an email address. If you can see that. So, and that's annette.munich@gmail.com. And we could show it, but only the people, basically in the chat and the people that watch it after would be able to see it. And our listeners on the ground won't be able to see it. But I would love to see it. You could send it to me, and the email address is there for contact for me. And we also have a contact for Father Shawn. I want to say thank you to everybody for coming. I wish you a wonderful night, a fabulous weekend. Many thanks to United Talk Radio, 107.7 FM, New Orleans 105.3, Gulf Coast. Also, Joe Montaldo, thank you. Michelle DeRoche, thank you. And I'd like to invite everyone to stay tuned for Carrie Lynn, Shellhorn, and Spirit Switchboard, which is coming up next. Have a beautiful week. Thank you, Carl. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. We'll do it again
You're
next
welcome.
Friday.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Take care. We'll see you next week.
Okay.